Organizational Behavior, Chapter 9, Personality and Cultural Values. Personality and cultural values. How can we describe what employees are like? The big five taxonomy. Taxonomy. Other taxonomies of personality. Cultural values. How important are personality and cultural values? Application personality traits. So these things we're talking about people now, not necessarily the organization or the group. We're talking about individuals in this chapter. Again, we have the integrative model of organizational behavior, which applies, we've seen in the previous chapters. Personality and cultural values. Personality consists of the structures and propensities inside us that explain our characteristics, pattern of thought, emotion, and behavior. What a person is like determines someone's social reputation, described by adjectives such as responsible, easygoing, and polite. Traits, reoccurring trends in people's responses to their environment. So as you see, when we look at the personality, we talk about what is a person like determines their reputation. But you hear these words when people talk about somebody's personality, they will describe them and they'll give you these adjectives, various adjectives, to include these and some others. Cultural values are shared beliefs about a desirable end states or modes of conduct in a given culture. What a culture is like, described by adjectives such as traditional, informal, and assertive, can influence the development and expression of people's personality traits. So, in other words, where you come from, your culture, whatever that culture may be, it has a lot to do with the type of person you end up being. And it helps mold you. And that's when sometimes you find some people, depending upon what type of culture they came from, it could be a very closed-minded culture, or it could be a very open and receptive culture. But either way, I found that when you have people who have issues sometimes, or sometimes when people are really good, you talk to them, you'll find out it's in their background. What makes him so good? Why is he so open? Why is he so great with people? Or why are the person is not? How can we describe what employees are like? By using personality traits and cultural values. Typically involves using adjectives, sorting adjectives into broad dimensions of the personality. So again, looking at the personality traits and the cultural values. A lot of times, again, the personality traits has a lot to do with the cultural values. And when we're talking about these kind of people, we are using adjectives to describe them. Well, what type of guy is he? And you tell them, or someone asks that about you, and somebody tells them. The five big taxonomy, the big five taxonomy, five broad dimensions or factors can be used when it comes to summarize our personalities. Conscientiousness is, just kind of when you look at conscientious people and you think in terms of conscientious people, how thinking about what they're doing and caring about what they're doing and being really bold and aggressive. Agreeableness. People who are easy to get along with. That's the best way to look at it. They had rather to get along than argue, fight. Neuroticism. These are people who are kind of almost paranoid about things. You can see when it comes to doing stuff, a lot of times they're not open. Openness to experience, which is, you see people who are open to experience, and and they'll kind of go with the flow, and they are easy type folks to work with. And extroversion. Extroversion is a term, is a play on the word extrovert. These people who are very outgoing, very sociable, a lot of times very willing to take the lead and get out in front. A lot of times you'll see people who follow or extroverts, extroversion. People might do things like be sales reps. Trait adjectives associated with the big five. So when you look at conscientiousness, we see them right there. So you can pause and read through them to get a better understanding of what each one of those are. The big five, when we look at it, we wanted to do a personal assessment. If you wanted to do a personal assessment to kind of get an idea of what you will be like, complete this chart right here to get an idea of what type of person that you may be. Personality norms chart right here. This can be rather confusing, so I'm not going to go over this one. Changes in the big five dimensions over the lifespan. Now, this one actually is very good, I think. Extroversion remains quite stable throughout a person's life. Openness to experience also remains stable after a sharp increase from the teenage years to college age. The other three dimensions, however, change quite significantly over a person's lifespan. So if we look at, let's see here. Look at openness. Look what happens to openness. If you see, it's the red line with the arrowhead on it at the bottom. Look what happens as you age. One of the things that you see, if you've noticed, we hear about older people, they seem to be not open to change, or they don't like a change. You've even heard this before. Can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, this is what this is about, because as we naturally age, one of the things that we find is we're less open to things. And you look up here at extroversion, you look at it, it actually stables off for a while. It peaks up right around your college, then it comes down, and then it goes stable for quite a while, probably from the 30s to the mid 50s. But look what happens towards the end. Even it starts to dip, which is be another thing is why you say, well, why is it sometimes that people who are older don't like to change, or they're not as aggressive and not as open to stuff? These two things right here will be the biggest reasons why. And you look at conscientiousness, it actually goes up as you age. And that's the kind of things that people care about, and how, for instance, you find a lot of times that people, as they age and get older, they may care more about things like just the environment, things around them. They're more conscientious about their surroundings, and things of that nature. Conscientious, relevant adjectives: dependable, organized, reliable, ambitious, hardworking, persevering. The biggest influence on job performance of any of the big five. So if you look at the conscientiousness, dependable, organized, reliable, ambitious, hardworking, persevering. So what we saw from the previous chart is, as you age, that has a tendency to go up. Accomplishment, striving, a strong desire to accomplish tasks, related goals, correlates to career success and good health. If you've noticed that you see, depending upon where you live, you may see a lot of people who are older, they may be close to retirement age or whatever else, who do things like walk now. Walk and exercise and go to the YMCA. They do a lot of volunteer work. Even though they may be retired, the hard working doesn't stop, the persevering doesn't stop. But as someone aged, basically your work ethic and things like that don't change. And having a strong desire to accomplish tasks and related goals, if they did it in their corporate life or did it when they was working, they'll still do it in retirement. Agreeableness, relevant adjectives: warm, kind, cooperative, sympathetic, helpful, courteous. Communion, striving. A strong desire to obtain acceptance by personal relationships, not related to performance in all jobs or occupations, beneficial in service jobs. So these people have a strong desire to be accepted in the personal relationships. So having harmony and being friends and stuff is important to them. And it may not even be related to the job, because even outside of the job, they still think that way. So it's not always related to jobs or whatever else. These are the kind of people who do good in service type jobs, where they're providing services to customers, clients, and things of that nature. If they're wired this way, then they're wired in a manner such as they want to find a way to work things out and to get along. And they're much more inclined to de-escalate a situation than to escalate a situation. Because remember, they're trying to get cooperation. So they'll work with you to try to get there if you will allow them. Extroversion. Relative adjectives: talkative, sociable, uh, passionate, assertive, bold, dominant. Easiest to judge in zero acquaintance situations. Uh, People have just met. Zero acquaintance situations when you're in a room and you don't know anybody. And you see these kind of people come in, then they'll find a way to make friends. They'll walk into a room and don't know anybody. They'll leave there that night knowing several people, and several people will know them. Their status: a strong desire to obtain power, influence with social structure. So a lot of times these will be the people who would seek to be leaders. Correlate with leadership emergence and effectiveness with job satisfaction. Positively, effectivity, a disposition, tendency to experience pleasant, engaging moods such as enthusiasm, excitement, and elation. So they promote a positive feeling in the workplace. That's how they function. And these are the kind of people that I like to be around. They help me feel better about what I'm doing, just being around those kind of folks. So it does have a positive energy even on others. So if we look at extroversion and neuroticism, think about this. Those are polar opposites. So let's look at the right. You see extroversion, and left you see neuroticism. And so when we look at it, they're polar opposites. So if we go counterclockwise, we start over there with extroversion, and we see enthusiasm, excited, and elated. High energy right there. So if we come down, we're the notch. So we're looking at happy and cheerful. So still positive being around somebody like that. Now, if we come down again a notch, we're talking about serene, calm, and content. So still may not be as upbeat or energetic, but it's still positive and serene. And at the very bottom down there, you see quiet, still inactive. So this is when it gets deactivated. Now you're going to another genre with another way, direction, maybe looking at someone else. Okay, so we're looking at the bottom. Bored, sluggish, and drowsy. At this point, it's not unpleasant to be around, but think about it. It's kind of like a drain on you, be around somebody like this. Now, if you go up, you got grouchy, sad, and blue. Okay, now you got somebody who's constantly complaining about things. Take it up to a step. Now you got hostile, nervous, and annoyed. And this is where I call it the danger zone. When you have people operating in this zone right here, something's going to happen. Either something directly or indirectly because of this person. Something is going to happen. I'll give you an example. Indirectly, because they're that way, other people are complaining about it to management. That I just don't like being around this guy because, when I say things to him, he snaps at me, he yells at me, and he's kind of mean and hateful. And he's always accusing me of doing things and stuff. So this is where you see when somebody gets to this point right here, that usually comes with consequences. Neuroticism, relevant adjectives: nervous, moody, emotional, insecure, jealous. Second, most important of the big five job performances. Few job benefits from traits associated with neuroticism. Most job benefits from employees who are calm, steady, and secure. Negatively affect affectivity. Tendency to experience unpleasant moods such as hostility, nervousness, and annoyance. Remember I told you how they can be with other people. They can be hostile and subsequently make other people nervous. And they can be annoyance too to folks because people don't like walking around eggshells around somebody who they're afraid they're going to erupt like a volcano. Associated with low levels of job satisfaction and happiness in general. These people, whether they're happy on the job or outside of the job, it doesn't matter. It could be in both places. But when you do see it in the workplace, I'm telling you, this is something all leaders and managers know that at some point in time, they're going to have to address this because really this is a problem. So we look at the neutral objects questionnaire. Basically, this is one where you're trying to figure out, determine, is there a moderate relationship between the job satisfaction and volunteer turnover? So you look at that and you can see, you can read on your own. And here's the second page of that as well. Neuroticism affects how people deal with stress. It does. Differential exposure, being more likely to Appraise day-to-day situations as stressful. Differential reactivity, being less likely to believe that one can cope with the stresses of. So realistically, these people are more likely to say that what I do is very stressful on a day-to-day basis. Whether it is or not, that's what they would say. And they believe that, and they're less likely to cope with it well as other people. The locus of control, whether people attribute the causes, events to themselves or to external environment. So neurotic people hold an external focus of control. Basically mean everything is wrong around me, but it's not me. Less neurotic people can hold an internal focus, can say, you know what, something could be going on with me. Internal, external locus of control. So let's look at the people with external locus control tend to believe many of the unhappy things in people's lives are partly due to bad luck. Getting a good job depends mainly on being in the right place at the right time, not that you're qualified. Many times exam questions tend to be so unrelated to the coursework that studying is really useless. So in other words, it doesn't matter what I study, what I do, I'm still going to do bad on this exam. This world is run by a few people in power, and there's not much people can do about it. So they almost believe like conspiracy theories or things along those lines. Hey, there's a couple people that run the whole world, and everybody else is just a pawn in that game of life. When you look at people with internal focus and control belief, people's misfortunes are a result of the mistakes they make. Basically, the reason I'm not getting this job is I didn't do well in the interview. Becoming a success in a matter of hard work, luck has little to do with it. And the reason they promoted me is because I earned it. In the case of the well-prepared student, there's rarely, if ever, such a thing as an unfair test. No, because the questions you gave me, the answers are in the book or in the course that I've studied. I can pass it. The average citizen will have an influence in governmental decisions. They believe that the power really belongs with the people, not the politician. People vote politicians in, people can vote them out. People are lonely because they don't try to be friendly. If you want to make friends, then they believe you need to get out and make some friends. You need to go places where people are out there trying to socialize and not at home sitting there waiting for somebody to come see you. So you see the two different outlooks. I guess the best way to look at it, one is promising and positive, and the other is pessimistic. Openness to experience. Relevant adjectives. Curious, imaginative, creative, complex, refined, sophisticated. Also called inquisitiveness, intellectualness, cultural. Beneficial in some jobs, but not in others. Not related to job performance across all occupations. Helpful in jobs that are dynamic, creative, with opportunities to learn. Adaptive, good at finding new and better approaches. So open to experience, it says beneficial in some jobs, but not in others. And I'm gonna give you an example. If you have a job where somebody is actually doing research and they are constantly having to try to work with things that are unknown and they have to figure them out. Open to experience is the type of person you would want to have. If you have somebody who is actually on a manufacturing line, and only thing that they're really supposed to do, I should say the only thing they're supposed to do, their job is to make some type of metal part. That's what they do 8 hours a day. An openness to experience person would not be good for that and will probably get bored and will probably leave it because it doesn't require inquisitiveness, intellectualness, creative, and something that they have to think about or whatever else. It's just doing. So this is why it says it's not related to, it's not good. It's beneficial in some jobs and not beneficial in others. So openness to experience and creativity. When we look at that, this is a process. You have cognitive ability. First of all, someone actually has the brain capacity to do something. Openness to experience. They have the will and the desire to do it. They bring those two together and they get creative thought. And the creative thought drives them because now it's like, okay, I've got this creative thought, but that drives them to a creative performance. And that is your outcome. So a lot of times when you see high producing people, this is the process that they go through. They don't realize it, but that is what they're going through, this process right here, so that they can be a creative performance. And I'll give an example. If you have people who are good investigators in law enforcement or good researchers when it comes to medicine, this is exactly how these people are wired. Test of creative thinking. So here's a test of creative thinking, and you can take this test on your own if you like and see how well you come out on it and where you are, what type of person you are. Other taxonomies of personality. The Myers-Briggs type indicator. The Myers-Briggs is a personality exam, is what that is. And it's commonly used in corporate America to gauge what type of personalities certain individuals are. Some people use it in the hiring process, others use it in the promotion process. So when we get into it, they get to talk about extroversion versus introversion, because you're trying to figure out what type of person are we talking about, an extrovert or introvert. Sensing versus intuition. When somebody senses something and based on, things that they hear or see or whatever else, versus intuition, it's my gut tells me something. Well, I have an intuition that it is a. Thinking is using rational process versus feeling. Feelings is emotional. Oh, I feel this way because I think she's nice. Judging is when you have preconceived something. You have a preconceived notion about something versus perceiving. Perceiving is when you actually processing what you see or hear. And so your judging can be based on what you think might be the case. Perceiving is based upon what you are actually seeing and hearing and feeling and touching. Not a tool for predicting job performance, but helpful in building. So when you look at these Myers-Briggs and you look at these other things, it's not a tool for predicting job performance, but helpful in team building. So this is what a lot of organizations use it for. Other taxonomies of personalities. The Reyes-Sec model. When you look at interest framework, summarized by 6 different personalities. So when we talk about 6 different personalities, realistic enjoys practical, hands-on, real-world tasks. Tends to be frank, practical, determined, and rugged. So this is what you will find a lot of people who might be inclined to do work, manual type labor. They will be classified as a realistic personality. That's what they do, hands-on, real-world type stuff. I'm dealing with it here and there. Investigative is going to be like the abstract, something, theories and things along the line. Again, like I said, investigators. They may be insurance investigators. They may be research investigators. They may be doctors who are researching, or people who work in the lab and trying to solve cure a illness. Artistic, when you think about that, these are creative type stuff. When you think about the entertaining, things that are fascinating. And the social is helping and serving others. When you think about people you like social work or whatever. Enterprising, and this is when you have people who are like enjoying, when they have things such as persuading, leading, and performing other tasks. These people are usually very energetic, and a lot of times you see them in leadership type positions. And conventional is when you have people who they organize, regulate, and tend to be careful and self-controlled, and they don't take a lot of risk. Commonly used to provide personality profile and a list of occupations that might be good to match for that profile. When we look at the Reyes-Sec model, okay, working with data, conventional. So if we go to the right, we see enterprising. We talked about what enterprising was. Working with people. If we come down, we got social, we got artistic. All this is to the right. When we go to the left, we see, and this is actually doing things, working with people, social, artistic, enterprising. Now we get over here and we see that on the left side, we see investigative. and realistic. So those groups that I just mentioned, you see how they fall on this model. So you see on the right side, what's the two big differences? Working with people. You see this on the right. But on the left side, working with things. So this has a lot to do with, and that's very important to understand. This has a lot to do with why some people have job dissatisfaction. If you are a person who are really personality wise or more suited for working with people, but you are in a field where you're working with things, or vice versa. You are a person who's more apt to work with things, but you're in a field where you're working with people. You see how some people have job dissatisfaction. They're actually working in the wrong capacity for the type of person that they are. Cultural values. Culture, shared values, beliefs, motives, identities, and interpretations that result from common experiences of members of a society, transmitted across generations. So when you think in terms of cultural values, this stuff goes back. This is not just you. This is your parents, your grandparents. And this is not just you, your parents, grandparents, the communities in which you come from. And you see how we get cultural shared values, how we have almost your beliefs, whatever, come into play too. Cultural values, shared beliefs about desirable end states or modes of conduct in a given culture, provide societies with their own distinctive personalities, reflect a feeling of how things should be done in a given society. So when you find people come to, particularly if you find yourself in a different country or in a different community, or you're living with a different ethnic group, or you're going to a place, school with different types of people, now this is when you get outside of your cultural area and you see people with different cultural values. And now that the world has become a global type society, this is where you find you're coming in contact with more and more people who are not like you. They're different in other places. Hofstede's dimensions of cultural values. So when we look at this, we see individualism and collectivism. Individualistic, you see the culture tends to be a loosely knit social framework where people take care of themselves and their immediate family. United States, Australia, and Italy. Collectivism, the culture tends to be a tight social framework where people take care of their members of a broader in-group and act loyal to it. China, Pakistan, South Korea. So I won't go through all of these, but you can pause these and read through and see just how some of these are different, how countries are different when you find some of the different types of, like for instance, power distance, uncertainty avoidance. And you can see, and some of you may come from countries that might be listed on here, and you can see what it would be like in your own country. Here we're talking about the masculinity and femininity. And again, I'll read the first ones of each one. Masculinity, the culture tends to value stereotypical male traits such as assertiveness and the acquisition of money and things. United States, Italy, and Japan. Feminine, the culture tends to value stereotypical female traits such as caring for others and caring about quality of life. Chile, South Korea, and Sweden. You can read through the rest of those on your own. Soul was a little animated movie. Jamie Foxx is one of the main characters in it. And this is about basically where souls go to somewhere like heaven. And when a baby is born, then this guy named Jerry sends one of the souls down to one of the new babies, which gives them their personality. So it's actually a cute little movie. Some of you want to see that. But, and that's kind of similar to what we're talking about here, how people have their different traits and different personalities. I've often heard it said when I work with leaders in the corporate America that leaders don't manage people, they manage personalities. And what you see is personalities actually form in small infants. And you can see this when they're small children, even when they're infants and some of the things that they do. So personality is something that forms almost from the date of birth, along with probably some of the things that you're biologically predisposed to because of your DNA. project. We talked about a few of these in previous slides. A couple of them I'm going to talk about here. It's going to be the gender egalitarianism. And this is where the culture promotes gender equality and minimizes role differences between men and women. So you don't necessarily have a situation where they say a specific, the males do one thing, women have something else that they do. Assertiveness, the culture values assertiveness, confrontation, aggressiveness, and social relationships. So this is where you may find it. A lot of times when you see this, it's a lot of times that's geared towards males in society. There may be some subcultures in societies where it may be generated by more so along females, primarily with males, to be that way. And future orientations, culture engages in planning investment in the future while delaying individual or collective gratification. So this is really about preparing for the future. And in order to do that, we will put aside our personal interest for gains or whatever else, so that we can do things prepare for the future. And performance is the culture. The culture encourages and rewards members for excellence and performance improvements. So that's really what you see kind of America. We reward people for doing good things of high performance and achieving. And humane is for those who members for being generous and kind and fair to others. And to include not only but people, but also to animals when we do things in that manner. So the Project Globe groups countries studied in clusters. U.S. is part of an Anglo-cluster, United States, Canada, and Australia, England. Anglo group scores in the middle of most cultural values. Examples: gender egalitarianism. The culture promotes gender equality and minimizes role differences between men and women. That was not always the case in the U.S., but it is now. Performance orientation. The culture encourages and rewards members for excellence and performance improvements. Definitely the United States, and you see the other countries as well. Here's a chart that if you were interested in, you can go ahead, see what your score would be on the power distance. Cultural values. Research into cultural values emphasize the distinction between individualism, collectivism. So which is relevant to topics within organizational behavior. Collectivists exhibit higher levels of task performance and citizenship behaviors in work team settings, lower levels of counterproductivity and withdrawal behaviors, greater commitment to employers, preference for group rewards versus rewards tied to individual achievement. So when you see that collectivism, it's about the group as a whole. That's basically what you're talking about. I don't do good, but we do good. And these people have a tendency to be loyal to their organizations, and they work well in team environments because they kind of promote a collective effort. And so when someone has this, they do prefer to have awards tied to group rewards versus individual. How can we describe what employers are like? So when we look at this chart here, we see the big five, we see the other taxonomies and cultural taxonomies, and we see personality and cultural values. So when you look at these things, so it's not one thing you can look at to say, well, what is an employee like? It's not one thing. Look here, the different things that you have to look at if you want to get an accurate picture of what somebody's like. It's not just a cultural value. It's not just a personality. It's all those things that ultimately lead you to the blue. What employees are like. This is why there's so many ways to get it wrong. How important are personality and cultural values? Conscientious has the strongest effect on task performance. Conscientious employees have higher levels of motivation, are more self-confident, perceive a clear link between effort and performance, are more likely to set goals and commit to them. So these, a lot of times, people who are wired like this, a lot of times they will be your leaders. They will end up being leaders in a group or a team, or end up being your leaders and go into leadership and management. Conscientious is a key driver of typical performance in the routine conditions that surround daily job tasks. Ability is a key driver of maximum performance in brief, special circumstances that demands a person's best effort. So these people are usually job proficient, very good at what they do, but they're drivers of positive momentum in the workplace. The effects of personality on performance. So when we look at the effects of personality on performance, we can see conscientious and job performance. And you can see yellow, it has represents a strong correlation in magnitude, represents a moderate correlation when you look at conscientious and organizational commitment. So look at job performance, it's high. Organizational commitment, that's moderate. How important are personality and cultural values? Personality is more important in some contexts than in others. Situational strengths suggest that strong situations have clear behavioral expectations that make differences between individuals less important. Personality variables tend to be more significant drivers of behavior in weak situations than in strong situations. So when we talk about personality variables tend to be more significant drivers of behavior in weak situations than in strong situations. So it's going back to situational strength suggests that strong situations have clear behavioral expectations that make difference individuals make differences between individuals less. So these things can have a significant role in what you play when you look at the variables with when it comes to the drivers in weak situations. Trait activation suggests that some situations provide cues that trigger the expression of a given trait. Personality variables tend to be more significant drivers of behaviors in situations that provide relevant cues than in situations in which those cues are lacking. So again, you see they come into play. They're significant drivers of behavior in situations that provide relevant cues. Remember I said earlier, many companies have used personality tests to assess job applicants. And what they're looking at is some of them have integrity tests, also called honesty tests, focus on predisposition to counterproductive behaviors. Basically, want to find out, is this person dishonest? Clear purpose tests assess attitudes towards dishonesty, including confessions of past dishonesty. Veiled purpose tests assess general personality traits associated with dishonesty. Most integrity tests assess a combination of high conscientious, high agreeableness, and low eroticism along with honesty. Even allowing for some faking among test takers, personality integrity tests are among the most useful tools for hiring. So when you look at clear purpose, sample, would you say that most people lie on their resume? Have you ever taken something home from work without saying anything? If a cashier gave you too much money, do you think you point out the error? You see that? Veiled. I rarely do things impulsively. I try to avoid hurting people's feelings. There are people out there I'd like to get back at. So if we look here, the effects of faking. So when they have these tests, they also they're looking at dishonesty type tests. So if you look at on the left, at the bottom, you see dishonest. On the right, you see honest. So if you see whether it's on the right or left, if you see the dot on the right with the line, you have a dot with a light circle with a line to a dark circle. Okay. When you look at the light circle, that's really the truth you're talking about right there. The line to the dark circle, you see score with faking. They understand that people will fake some of this stuff. And when they say faking, let me explain to you what that means. A lot of times that means not an outright lie, but usually an exaggeration, stretching the truth. And they understand it. Just most applicants will do a certain degree of that. What they go back and do is look at and say, how much will they allow for that? And you can see even on the right, when you have honest, and you have on that side, you still have some answers that were honest and some that were not quite so honest, even on the right. That concludes chapter 9.